Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the December public meeting for the Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Board. I believe it's going to be a few more moments while we let people continue to join, but please stand by and stick with us. Right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the Chemical Safety and Hazard Board December public meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody. If you have any questions or issues, please raise your hand or enter them into the chat. If you click on more, the three dots, you should be able to enable transcription and closed captionings if you do require that. And now I'll hand it off to our board chairman, Steve Owens.
Well, thank you, Steve, and hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As Steve said, I'm Steve Owens. I'm the chairperson of the Chemical Safety Board. Welcome to the CSB's first public meeting of fiscal year 2026. Ordinarily, we would have held this meeting in October, but the government shutdown kept us from holding it at that time. So we are here today. And as I always seem to do at these meetings, let me start by saying how incredibly busy the CSB has been since our last public meeting, which was back in June. Since that meeting, we've deployed to three new major chemical incidents. The first is the fatal explosion and fire at the Horizon Biofuels facility in Fremont, Nebraska, that occurred on July 29. The blast fatally injured three people, a father and his two young daughters, who were in the facility at the time of the incident. The two young girls were just 12 and 8 years old. The second is the fatal explosions and fires at the U.S. Steel Clairton Coke Works plant in Clairton, Pennsylvania, that occurred on August 11th. 2 workers were killed in the incident, and several others were taken to area hospitals for treatment. The third is the fatal explosion at the Accurate Energetic Systems explosives manufacturing facility in McEwen, Tennessee, that occurred on October the 10th. This catastrophic incident resulted in the deaths of 16 people and several serious injuries, and it completely destroyed the building where the blast occurred. Including these 3 investigations, the CSB now has 9 investigations currently ongoing. During this meeting, you'll hear presentations about the 3 new investigations, as well as another of our ongoing investigations. In addition to our new investigations, in September, we issued the final report for the CSB's investigation into the hazardous ammonia release that occurred in August of 2024 at the Cuisine Solutions food processing facility in Sterling, Virginia. A number of employees were seriously injured in that event. You'll hear a presentation on this report as well during this meeting. Also in September, we released a new safety video on the CSB's investigation into the massive March 2019 fire that burned for 3 days at the ITC tank storage facility in Deer Park, Texas. The fire caused more than $150 million in property damage and led to several shelter-in-place orders that seriously disrupted the local community. And we don't have time to show the ITC video during this meeting, but I encourage you to go to the CSB's YouTube page and watch it. The video has been viewed more than 350,000 times so far. And while you're watching it, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube page if you haven't done so already. We have over 402,000 subscribers right now, but we'd be delighted to have even more, including all of you. And speaking of safety videos, just this week, on Tuesday afternoon, we released another new video. This one discusses the CSB's investigation into the fatal explosion and fire at the Yinkin Majestic facility in Columbus, Ohio, that occurred in April of 2021. One employee was killed in the incident, and 8 others were injured. In the 48 hours since the Yinkin video was posted to our YouTube page, it already has been viewed over 150,000 times. So please take a look at it too when you're on the YouTube site. Finally, during the meeting today, you'll hear a presentation about some of the data that's been reported to the CSB under the agency's accidental release reporting rule. You know, serious chemical incidents occur on a weekly basis throughout the United States. And in the 5 years that the reporting rule has been in effect, the agency has received reports of hundreds of serious chemical incidents in more than 40 states across this country. During fiscal year 2025 alone, 120 incidents were reported to the CSB. But before I turn the floor over to my fellow board member, Sylvia Johnson, for her remarks, I want to remind everyone that at the end of today's presentations, we'll provide an opportunity for public comments. In the interest of time, we ask that you please raise your hand on your screen, raise the icon on your screen so you can raise your hand so that you can be recognized to speak. And please keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you would prefer to submit written comments instead of speaking them here today, you can send them to the following email address. It's public, P-U-B-L-I-C, at csb.gov. That's public at csb.gov. Now I'd like to turn this over to my fellow board member, Sylvia Johnson, for her remarks. And I also want to thank all of you again for being here with us today. Sylvia, take it away.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you all for being here today. As the chairperson said, a great deal has happened since our last public meeting in June, and the Chemical Safety Board continues to move forward with purpose. We've released additional investigative report, which you will hear about later in the presentation. We've made several recommendation status changes, issued factual updates, produced more of our widely viewed safety videos, and launched the 3 new investigations that the chairperson discussed in his opening remarks. Each of these investigations involved multiple fatalities. And any single loss of life is one too many, but when incidents claim many lives at once, the loss is unfathomable. The explosion at Accurate Energy Systems in McEwen, Tennessee, where 16 people were killed, is one of the deadliest events the CSB has investigated since the agency began operation in 1998. 16 lives lost in one incident. That's not only a tragedy, it's a warning to every facility handling hazardous materials that safety cannot be optional. Transparency remains at the heart of the CSB's work, and through our accidental release reporting rule, we continue to collect and share vital data about chemical incidents across the country. This information is public because lessons learned should never stop at the facility's gate. Safety is never abstract, it's personal, it's about people who work hard, raise families, and trust that they will come home safe each day. Behind every statistic is a name, a family, and a community. When safety fails, people, not numbers, pay the price. Today's meeting is a reminder of what's at stake when chemical safety fails and what's possible when we get it right. As we review our recent work, I want to emphasize a truth that's at the heart of every CSB investigation, and that is chemical incidents are preventable. With the right systems, training, and hazard awareness, these tragedies don't have to keep happening. Our mission doesn't wait. Our responsibility is not only to document what went wrong, but to drive change so that it doesn't happen again. To our staff, I express my gratitude. Your work builds the foundation for lasting change. Each investigation, each recommendation, and video and report help strengthen a culture where prevention comes first. Progress doesn't happen by chance. It's the result of science, engineering, vigilance, and the courage to act before disaster strikes. Your work matters, it saves lives, but most importantly, it builds public trust, and it helps to transform responsibility from a statement of intent to a standard practice. As we look ahead, our mission remains the same. We're here to protect workers, safeguard communities, and preserve the environment. Every report we publish, every lesson we share, and every life we protect adds to the CSB's ongoing story, which is a story of collaboration, learning, and progress. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention and your commitment to chemical safety. Steve, back to you.
Well, thank you, Sylvia, and I echo everything you just said in those comments. We really appreciate them. Now we'll get to the meat of our meeting today, and we'll turn this over to our Executive Director of Investigations and Recommendations, Steve Kleist, to lead us through the next portion of our meeting today.
Thank you, Chairperson Owens, and good afternoon to everyone. The presentations this afternoon will provide an update on the significant activities and accomplishments of the Office of Investigations and Recommendations. As the chairman mentioned in his opening remarks, since the last public business meeting, the CSB is deployed to 3 new accidental release events, and will provide updates on those 3 deployments. We will also highlight the major findings, cause, and recommendation from the recently completed Cuisine Solutions investigation. We will begin with an overview of the Austin Powder and U.S. nitrogen investigation and the Accurate Energetic Systems accidental release investigations. So, Ms. Hartz, please begin with the Austin Powder U.S. nitrogen presentation.
Thank you, Steve. This is an update for the CSB's investigation into incidents that occurred at 2 facilities owned by the Austin Powder Company on November 24, 2024 in Midway, Tennessee, and on June 11, 2025 in MacArthur, Ohio. NOx is a collective term for 7 nitrogen oxide compounds. Nitrogen dioxide, or NO2, is a reddish-brown gas and is the major component of visible NOx emissions. Next slide, please. On June 11th, 2025, an estimated 3,945 pounds of NOx was released to the atmosphere through an emergency pressure relief valve on the left in the photo and a process vent on the right at Austin Powder's Red Diamond facility in MacArthur, Ohio. A storage tank containing 85% nitric acid reached a high temperature, emitting the NOx gas into the atmosphere while the emissions control equipment was offline. The release lasted for over 3 hours. The nearby community of Zaleski, Ohio, was evacuated by the local incident command, which was headed by the Zaleski Fire Department. Additionally, during the incident, airspace was restricted by the Federal Aviation Administration for a 30-mile radius around the facility. No injuries were reported. Next slide, please. On November 24th, 2024, 2 NOx releases occurred at Austin Powder's U.S. nitrogen facility in Midway, Tennessee. The first NOx release, which happened at 6:47 a.m., was from the exhaust stack at the facility and occurred during startup activities of the facility's nitric acid production unit. The second NOx released from the exhaust stack occurred at approximately 8:42 a.m. during a second failed startup of the nitric acid unit. The company estimated that 910 pounds of NOx was released during the 2 incidents. No injuries were reported. The investigation is ongoing for both events.
Thank you, Ms. Hartz. The next presentation will be an overview of the Accurate Energetic Systems explosion and fire event that took place in October of this year. Supervisory Chemical Incident Investigator Lauren Grimm will be making the presentation. So, Ms. Grimm, please begin.
Yes, hello. The Accurate Energetic Systems team is actually currently in the field right now, so today I will be giving this presentation on their behalf. Next slide, please. On October 10th, 2025, approximately 23,000 pounds of explosives were involved in multiple detonations and fires inside Building 602 at the Accurate Energetic Systems facility in McEwen, Tennessee. AES is the short acronym for this. AES manufactures explosives for commercial and military use, and Building 602 housed operations where explosives were melted and poured into booster charges. The explosion fatally injured 16 of the AES employees, and there were non-fatal injuries. The incident also resulted in the complete destruction of Building 602. Next slide. After the incident, ATF and local emergency responders immediately responded to the incident, and ATF took control of the site between the dates of October 10th and October 24th, 2025. The CSB then deployed 2 of our investigators on October 29th, and since then they've been interviewing personnel, gathering evidence, and collecting documentation. Our investigation is currently ongoing. Our team is continuing to conduct interviews with AES personnel. We are gathering additional documentation. We are working on identifying the potential cause of the incident, and we're currently determining the causal factors that led to the incident.
Thank you, Lauren, for the presentation and update.
Thank you.
Our next presentation will be an accounting of the key findings, lessons learned, cause and recommendations issued in connection with the ammonia release at the Cuisine Solutions facility in Sterling, Virginia. Melinda Hart served as the investigator in charge, and Melinda is back again to do this presentation. So Melinda, please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Executive Director Kleist. On July 31st, 2024, the Cuisine Solutions food processing facility in Sterling, Virginia, experienced an ammonia release when an emergency pressure relief valve on its ammonia refrigeration system opened. 286 employees and contract workers were on site at the time, and all were evacuated. During the evacuation, some personnel inhaled ammonia vapor and were injured. When emergency responders arrived at the scene, they reported more than 10 unconscious individuals. 33 workers were transported to area hospitals for treatment. 4 of them were admitted, including one who was placed in intensive care. The company estimated the cost of the incident at $3 million. During the afternoon or evening of July 31st, 2024, a refrigeration process upset likely began in one of the heat exchange processes. Without process data available for analysis, the specific cause of the process upset could not be determined. An overpressure event occurred at approximately 8:20 p.m. The emergency pressure relief valve opened on the heat exchanger 5 surge drum, that's the middle vessel in the orange box, which discharged ammonia to the atmosphere. The red circle is the discharge point. Because the discharged ammonia contained a high liquid fraction, some of the ammonia rapidly slumped to ground level. Some gas also migrated over the roof of the building into the evacuation route. While the production manager called for a site evacuation shortly after the visible release began, there was no site-wide evacuation alarm. The CSB report detailed 3 safety issues: 2-phase atmospheric relief, discharging to a safe location, and emergency preparedness. Next slide, please. The first safety issue is 2-phase atmospheric relief. The emergency pressure relief devices in the refrigeration system may release cold vapor or vapor with liquid droplets, or aerosols. The cold, heavier than air material can slump to the ground, as seen here, creating a hazard for people evacuating. The CSB concluded that on the night of the incident, the ammonia release contained liquid aerosol and, as a result, immediately dangerous to life or health, or IDLH, concentrations reached ground level near the building and some evacuation routes. Liquid in the relief discharge was the most critical factor causing IDLH conditions on the ground. The emergency pressure relief system was not designed for liquid in the discharge. The next safety issue is discharging to a safe location. A fundamental design principle for an emergency pressure relief system is to ensure that the system discharges to a safe location. During this incident, the atmospheric discharge at the orange star in the photo was next to the employee parking lot, the employee entrance, and some emergency exit doors. The CSB found that Cuisine Solutions did not provide mitigation for a liquid or two-phase ammonia discharge. Had effective mitigative safeguards existed, Cuisine Solutions might have been able to ensure no harm to people. The International Institute of All Natural Refrigeration, known as IIAR, is an industry group that publishes standards and guidelines for ammonia refrigeration systems, some of which have also been adopted by the American National Standard Institute, or ANSI. One such standard is ANSI IIAR-2, Standard for Design of Safe Closed-Circuit Ammonia Refrigeration Systems. The CSB found that while ANSI IIAR-2 contains requirements for atmospheric relief discharge piping, these requirements may not be sufficient to ensure that ammonia discharges to a safe location. Next slide, please. The final safety issue is emergency preparedness. On the night of the incident, the on-site personnel generally executed the site's emergency action plan as written. However, the CSB identified several gaps in the emergency action plan and in the site's overall emergency preparedness, including not accounting for wind direction, not differentiating between indoor and outdoor ammonia releases, not having written emergency shutdown procedures employees could follow before or during evacuation, ineffective planning and training on the use of the refrigeration system emergency shutdown function, and ineffective drills for ammonia releases. Although the decision to evacuate was made within a minute of a visible cloud appearing, communicating the evacuation instructions was ineffective, in part because there was no evacuation alarm to alert all employees at once of the evacuation order. Instead, radio and word of mouth communicated instructions for where to exit the building. This prolonged the evacuation and caused some evacuees to exit the building in the direction of the release. Next slide, please. The CSB issued recommendations to two groups to further improve safety, Cuisine Solutions and the IIAR. Next slide. The CSB issued 4 recommendations to Cuisine Solutions. First, reduce the likelihood or mitigate the consequences of liquid or two-phase atmospheric discharges. This includes identifying liquid or two-phase release scenarios, implementing engineering controls to reduce the likelihood or mitigate the consequences of these scenarios, and contracting a competent third party to audit the pressure relief systems. The audit should ensure that all relief scenarios have been identified, that hazards are adequately addressed, and that engineering controls are properly maintained. Second, implement an electronic process data historian to enable personnel to monitor, respond to, and investigate process upsets. To address the emergency preparedness safety issue, update the site's emergency action plan using industry guidance. And finally, add an alarm or alarms specific to ammonia releases, which may include multiple distinct alarms, such as one for shelter in place and one for evacuation. The CSB issued 2 recommendations to the IIAR. The first is to update ANSI IIAR-2 to include guidance for preventing or mitigating liquid or two-phase atmospheric discharges from emergency pressure relief systems. At a minimum, the guidance should identify at-risk scenarios such as horizontal vessels, address design considerations and controls to reduce the likelihood of overpressure, and require mitigative safeguards in cases where vapor-liquid disengagement during pressure relief cannot be reliably ensured. And finally, include a requirement to assess whether emergency pressure relief devices discharge to a safe location, such as with a dispersion analysis. This concludes the presentation on the Cuisine Solutions incident, and back to you, Executive Director Kleist.
Thank you, Melinda, and I'd like to thank you and your leadership of the team that investigated the incident and developed such a fine report that will provide learning for the industry to benefit from the work that we do. Our next presentation will be on the Horizon Biofuels incident. The agency issued an investigation update on September 17. The investigator in charge, Melike Yursis, will make the presentation this afternoon. Melike, please proceed.
Good afternoon. Today we're providing an update on the CSB's investigation of an explosion and fire at the Horizon Biofuels facility in Fremont, Nebraska. On July 29, 2025, at approximately 11:56 a.m., a large explosion occurred at the Horizon Biofuels facility in Fremont, Nebraska. The explosion fatally injured 3 people, an operator and his 2 young daughters, aged 8 and 12. The blast caused extensive damage to the facility, affecting the production tower, offices, and warehouse. Several fires erupted at the facility, and combustible material continued to smolder for more than a month after the incident. Horizon Biofuels produced wood pellets for use as home heating fuel and wood mulch for animal bedding. The company produced these materials from scrap wood. Horizon Biofuels started production in 2009 after acquiring and adapting a grain mill facility built in the early 1970s that had produced animal feed pellets. Horizon Biofuels production processes started by grinding scrap wood deliveries into mulch and a fine wood meal. Conveying equipment transported the material to process equipment and storage bins inside the tower. Process equipment included a pellet mill that compressed the wood into small pellets, which were then cooled, screened, and bagged. A dust collection system was connected to the process equipment to help control wood dust generated from the process. Air blowers routed the wood dust through an enclosed system into the dust control equipment located on the top floor of the tower. The company employed 5 people, 2 operators, 2 part-time maintenance employees, and the general manager. At the time of the incident, the day shift operator was the only employee at the facility. Now we move on to the incident description. Horizon Biofuels employees told the CSB that the facility operated normally the day before the incident, and no operational issues were reported during the night shift prior to the incident. On the morning of the incident, the day shift operator brought his 2 daughters to work, as one of the girls had medical appointments in the afternoon. The 2 girls waited for their father in the break room while he worked. At approximately 11:56 a.m., a large puff of dust or smoke started billowing from windows near the top of the tower, shown here in panel 1, as well as from openings from the ground floor of the tower, not pictured here. Within seconds, flames started jetting out of the windows, as you see in panel 2. Panel 3 shows the large explosion that followed at the top of the tower. Panel 4 shows how the explosion and fire then propagated through the facility, which severely damaged the structures. During the explosion, portions of the tower and its adjacent structures collapsed, including the break room immediately next to the tower where the 2 girls were located. Combustible materials inside the partially collapsed, structurally unstable building continued to burn well after the explosions. Other fuel sources, such as a natural gas line and propane cylinders at the facility, exacerbated the fire. Witnesses working in neighboring businesses reported that they approached the building and heard the operator call for help. Some of the witnesses entered the collapsed warehouse area and attempted to rescue him without success. When emergency responders arrived, they evacuated everyone from the area due to the risk of explosion, the continuing fire, and the potential for building collapse, which made search, rescue, and recovery dangerous. Responders were not able to access the building until the following day on July 30th, when they recovered the bodies of the 3 fatally injured people while coordinating fire suppression efforts and continual monitoring of the structural integrity of the building throughout the recovery operation. Preliminary evidence indicates that the explosion occurred when a large release of combustible wood product, most likely wood dust from the process, ignited. The National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, defines a combustible dust as a finely divided combustible particulate solid that presents a flash fire hazard or explosion hazard when suspended in air over a range of concentrations. Dust generated in wood processing facilities can be combustible. Combustible dust can explode when it meets the 5 conditions as illustrated in the combustible dust explosion pentagon on the right. Dust may accumulate on surfaces and lie undisturbed for a long time. An initial fire or explosion, known as a primary event, may shake this dust loose and cause it to disperse throughout a building. When the dispersed material reaches an explosive concentration in the confinement of an enclosed space, it can ignite and generate secondary dust explosions powerful enough to destroy buildings. The CSB previously investigated 8 combustible dust explosion incidents that spanned multiple industries and commodities. Additionally, in 2006, the CSB published a combustible dust hazard study that analyzed 281 combustible dust incidents between 1980 and 2005 that killed 119 workers, injured 718 workers, and extensively damaged industrial facilities. You can find these reports on the CSB's website. These CSB reports and their recommendations have influenced a number of revisions to combustible dust standards over the years. The CSB is continuing to gather facts and analyze several key areas, including cause or probable cause of the initiating dispersion of dust, events and conditions at the facility prior to the incident, post-incident equipment condition and failure analysis, properties of combustible wood dust, industry guidance for facilities that generate wood dust, and regulatory analysis. Our investigation is ongoing. Complete findings, analyses, and recommendations, if appropriate, will be detailed in the CSB's final investigation report. This concludes our Horizon Biofuels presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Melike, for the presentation, and also thank you to and members of the team for the field work involved up to this point, and in your work in developing the investigation update so that everyone affected by these types of incidents can best learn from the facts that have been identified to date. Our next presentation will cover the investigation update that was issued on September 29th on the U.S. Steel Clairton fatal explosion event at the coking facility U.S. Steel operates in Clairton, Pennsylvania. The IIC and Deputy IIC are on travel conducting investigative work today, so filling in for the investigator in charge, Bill Steiner, will be Butch Griffin. Butch, please proceed with the presentation.
Thank you, Executive Director Kleist. On behalf of Investigator in Charge Bill Steiner and the rest of the investigation team, I will be providing an update on the CSB's investigation into the fatal explosion that occurred at the U.S. Steel Clairton Coke Works facility in Clairton, Pennsylvania. The August 11th, 2025 event resulted in 2 U.S. Steel employee fatalities, 5 serious injuries, and a temporary shutdown of at least 2 coke batteries. The CSB has since learned that one of these coke batteries was able to be restarted on October 23rd, 2025. The Clairton Coke Works facility converts raw coal into coke, a carbon-rich substance used as fuel in blast furnaces for iron and steel production. The coking process occurs in equipment called coke ovens. A coke battery is a series of coke ovens connected by common walls and operated as a single unit. The coke ovens are used to heat the coal, and this heating process removes tar, light oils, and other volatile compounds from the coal, known collectively as coke oven gas. The raw coke oven gas is collected and processed in a downstream unit. Some of the processed coke oven gas is returned to the batteries to be used as fuel to heat the coke ovens. The coke oven gas processing unit supplies processed coke oven gas to batteries 13 and 14 through an underground piping system. The coke oven gas flow splits at a T to direct it to either battery. After the T, each battery is equipped with a manually operated isolation valve. Downstream of this isolation valve, the coke oven gas further splits into two parallel streams, each of which flows down one side of the battery. The incident occurred in an area between two coke oven batteries, battery 13 and battery 14, known as the battery 13 transfer area. The battery 13 gas isolation valve was located in the basement underneath the battery 13 transfer area. The valve was an 18-inch cast iron double disc gate valve. Markings on the valve's body indicate that the Chapman division of Crane Company fabricated it in 1953, and it was rated for 50 pounds per square inch. The valve had two cleanout ports directed at the bottom of the valve seat, one on either side of the valve body. Prior to the incident, on July 8, 2025, a U.S. Steel employee identified a coke oven gas leak from a valve downstream of the battery 13 isolation valve, circled in green in the diagram. The company found that the downstream valve was cracked near one of its flanges. U.S. Steel applied a temporary repair to the cracked valve, which prevented flammable coke oven gas from leaking into the battery 13-14 basement area. To replace the damaged valve, U.S. Steel planned to isolate battery 13 from the coke oven gas supply. In addition, U.S. Steel planned to opportunistically replace at least 3 other valves in the battery 13 coke oven gas supply system while the gas to the battery was isolated and purged from the piping. On July 28, 2025, U.S. Steel held a meeting to define the scope of work and review the hazards for the upcoming maintenance outage for the battery 13 coke oven gas system planned for August 19, 2025. U.S. Steel had a procedure for exercising the battery 13 gas isolation valve, along with other valves at the site. Exercising a battery gas isolation valve involved closing the valve and then reopening it to ensure it could successfully isolate downstream equipment. U.S. Steel employees reported that they occasionally had difficulty fully seating a valve when exercising it due to the accumulation of residue over time on the valve seat. U.S. Steel's procedure allowed for introducing steam into the valve body to heat it prior to exercising the valve. The procedure did not mention the use of water. On August 11, 2025, U.S. Steel decided to exercise the battery 13 gas isolation valve. A U.S. Steel supervisor called a contractor and requested that they provide a pump to flush the valve seat. At approximately 10:30 a.m., 3 U.S. Steel employees proceeded to the battery 13 gas isolation valve to begin exercising it. 3 contract employees were preparing their equipment to inject water toward the valve seat through a cleanout port from a hose connected to a positive displacement pump. The U.S. Steel supervisor instructed the contract crew to begin pumping water into the valve body through one of the cleanout ports. Once water was introduced into the valve, the U.S. Steel employees began to exercise the valve. Around this time, gas monitors began alarming. One of the contract workers told the CSB that they observed water leaking from the valve's bonnet flange. Additionally, the workers heard a pop sound, and one U.S. Steel employee reported smelling gas. The U.S. Steel supervisor directed the workers to evacuate the basement, and the U.S. Steel employees then called for the evacuation of batteries 13 and 14, both verbally and by radio. The explosion occurred at approximately 10:47 a.m., less than 1 minute after the workers made the radio evacuation call. At the time of the explosion, at least 4 people were on top of battery 14 and the battery 13-14 transfer area. The explosion also heavily damaged the structures within the battery 13-14 transfer area, including both the battery 13 and battery 14 reversing rooms. The CSB is continuing to gather facts and analyze several key areas, including to conduct metallurgical analysis of failed valves, which includes computed tomography and other non-destructive and destructive evaluations, to investigate the use of cast iron valves and hydrogen-rich coke oven gas piping systems, and to analyze U.S. Steel policies, procedures, and practices. This concludes my presentation, and I turn it over back to you, Executive Director Kleist.
Well, thank you, Butch, and I appreciate you stepping into the breach and making the presentation on behalf of the investigator in charge. With this investigation update, as with the Horizon Biofuels investigation update, the information contained provides industries with valuable information about these 2 incidents so that they could take a critical look at their operations to see if they have similar risks associated with those operations. And we hope the industry does react and properly utilize this very important information. Our next presentation will be made by Senior Chemical Incident Investigator Dan Tolima on data provided to the agency under the Accidental Release Reporting Rule. Dan, please proceed.
Thank you, Executive Director Kleist. My name is Dan Tolima, and I will provide the update on our accidental release program. Next slide. Thank you. Through November, there have been 586 accidental release events, which is approximately 9 events per month over the duration of this program. 90 of these events involve fatal injuries, 321 had serious injuries, and substantial property damage was reported for 277 events. Serious injury remains the most frequent consequence that triggers reporting, with approximately 55% of the events involving a serious injury. The reporting of accidental release events is at an all-time high. Over the last 3 months, 46 accidental release events were reported. For the first time, the 3-month moving average is above 14 events. Next slide. In July, we published our 3rd volume of incident reports, providing the public with more information from the Accidental Release Reporting Rule. Each incident report summarizes the accidental release event and provides a probable cause statement. Volume 3 covered 30 accidental release events in 15 states. Combined, these events resulted in 2 fatalities, 25 serious injuries, and approximately $1.8 billion in property damage. 2 of these events involved online leak repair efforts where thin, corroded piping broke, releasing flammable material that ignited. Combined, these 2 events resulted in 4 serious injuries and $157 million in property damage. These events provide valuable lessons for anyone involved with making a temporary leak repairs to process piping and similar equipment. The first event occurred in November 2021 when an explosion and fire took place at the PBF Energy Refinery in Oregon, Ohio, resulting in $50 million in property damage. Leading up to this incident, a small leak of liquefied petroleum gas was discovered in a section of 54-year-old, 1.5-inch diameter drain piping. A contractor was hired to design and install a repair clamp to stop the leak. After the clamp was installed, workers were adding sealant when the drain piping catastrophically failed, releasing LPG which ignited, resulting in the explosion and fire. PBF Energy's investigation found that excessive sealant pressure had stretched and broken the drain piping. The investigation also revealed significant internal and external corrosion that had occurred in the piping over the past decade. Externally, corrosion under insulation had damaged the piping, likely from insulation added as part of the refinery's seasonal winterization program. Internally, corrosion had occurred from online water washing that did not include flushing low points, such as this section of drain piping. Based on PBF Energy's investigation, the CSB determined that the probable cause of the incident was the release of flammable liquefied petroleum gas during a temporary leak repair. A section of highly corroded piping broke while sealant was being injected into a leak repair clamp. The addition of insulation for winterization, combined with more frequent water washing of upstream equipment without flushing the low point drains, likely accelerated corrosion and contributed to the incident. Next slide. A month after the PBF Energy event, an explosion occurred at the ExxonMobil refinery in Baytown, Texas, when piping within a hydrodesulfurization unit catastrophically ruptured. The incident seriously injured 4 contractors and caused approximately $107 million in property damage. 2 days before this explosion, a fire occurred at a 14-inch flange as shown in the photo. ExxonMobil personnel used steam lances to extinguish the fire. An emergency repair plan was developed to stop the release of hot naphtha by wrapping the flange with wire and replacing the flange bolts with injectable bolts. As workers replaced the bolts using a hydraulic wrench, the wrench applied localized force to a 59-year-old, 14-inch diameter piping elbow, which ruptured the elbow and adjacent piping. The explosion and fire seriously injured 4 contract workers who were transported to hospitals and admitted for treatment. ExxonMobil's investigation revealed that the 14-inch elbow had undergone extreme wall thinning due to sulfidation corrosion. Based on ExxonMobil's investigation, the CSB determined that the probable cause of the incident was the release of hot naphtha vapor while attempting an emergency leak repair. A hydraulic torque wrench applied external force to a severely corroded piping component, initiating the rupture. The hot naphtha auto-ignited, resulting in the fire. The lack of an inspection that could have identified the dangerously thin piping components contributed to the incident. ExxonMobil could have prevented this incident by inspecting the piping components to identify the accelerated sulfidation corrosion and by replacing these severely corroded components long before the emergency flange repair work was attempted. That concludes the update on accidental release reporting, and I'll turn it back over to Executive Director Kleist.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you for your leadership in the operation of the Accidental Release Reporting Rule program. This is very important information for the industry to have. I'd also like to share my appreciation to the investigators that all contributed to the production of the Volume 3 of our incident reporting document. Our next presentation will focus on recommendations that have been issued and modifications to the recommendation status at the agency. The Director of Recommendations, Chuck Barbie, will be making the presentation this afternoon. So Chuck, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Executive Director Kleist. As he said, I'm Chuck Barbie. I'm the Director of Recommendations for the CSB, and I will be presenting on fiscal year 25 information, as well as highlighting a couple of recommendations since the last public meeting. Next slide, please. This is the general layout. So the fiscal year 25 recommendations data. We're going to go over issued recommendations, status changes, closed out investigations. Then we're going to roll into advocacy that was done for fiscal year 25. The advocacy program highlights recommendation recipients. And then, as I said, finally, we'll highlight a couple of recommendations since the last public meeting. In this case, it'll be Aghorn, R7, and Loy Lang, R8, which are very tragic stories as far as how the investigation went. Next slide, please. All right. So Rex data. For the year, for fiscal year 25, we issued 25 new recommendations, which is 25 new opportunities to drive chemical safety excellence. So this is the meat and potatoes of what we do. We work with our investigative teams. After each of the investigations, we identify gaps and figure out how to close those gaps. So we issued 8 from Marathon Martinez, 4 from Honeywell Gasmeyer, 7 from TSUSA, and 6 from Cuisine Solutions. And so those are out there, new recommendations on the street, ready to be implemented. Next slide, please. This year we closed 51 recommendations, and that's a big number for us. And we're always happier when we close more recommendations than we issue because our numbers get better. But at the end of the day, these are all demonstrations of opportunities to close some of those safety gaps we've identified. So of the 59, 49 were acceptable. Only 1 was unacceptable, and 1 was superseded. And for those of you that don't know what superseded means, that's when we issue a recommendation to a recipient, especially if it's been on the street for a while, occasionally we'll run into the same situation and we need to address with the same recipient. And maybe there's some updated information, or maybe it needs to be tweaked just a little bit. And we take that opportunity. And so when we issue that new recommendation, it allows us the opportunity to close the previous one. And that is what happened in this case with the superseded recommendation. Next slide, please. We advanced 42 recommendations. And what that means is initially we will, when the board approves an investigation product with recommendations, it goes out as it's an open recommendation. Well, when the recipient communicates with us and tells us they're going to implement it and gives us a timeline on how long it's going to take, those are advanced. So we change that status to open acceptable. On the converse, sometimes they tell us they're not going to do it, or they don't respond at all. And in those cases, it's advanced unacceptable. Now, this past year, we had 14 unacceptable advanced recommendations. And keep that number in the back of your head, because I'm going to discuss that later in the presentation, that very specific statistic. Next slide, please. We're going to talk a little bit about, there were 4 investigations in which all the recommendations were closed in fiscal year 25. The first of those is the Caribbean Petroleum Corporation, which we refer to as CAPECO, and the refinery tank explosion and fire. This incident occurred way back in 2009. While they were offloading the contents of a tank ship, the Cape Rooney, into the CAPECO tank farm, gasoline overflowed, went into a storage tank, from a storage tank, went into a containment dike that had an open drain, and then sprayed from the tank's roof vents, formed a large vapor cloud, and ignited. The consequences of that were 200,000 gallons spilled. This impacted the soil, wetlands, navigable waterways. 17 of the 48 tanks were destroyed, 300 homes and businesses were damaged. They felt the explosion on this more than a mile away. So this was very, very significant. The report was released October of 2015, and it had 9 recommendations associated with it. Next slide, please. The next one is the Williams-Olefins plant explosion and fire. This one is somewhat near and dear to my heart. This is the first investigation I worked on at the CSB, so I was happy that we've closed out all the recommendations on this one. This one happened in June of 2013. Fire and explosion occurred at the Williams-Olefins plant in Geismar, Louisiana, when a reboiler ruptured due to an overpressure event while it was isolated from its pressure relief device. Consequences of this were 2 employees were fatally injured, 167 workers were injured, and that's the breakdowns: 164 contractors and three of the employees from Williams. This report was released on October 19th of 2016, and it had 5 recommendations associated with it. Next slide, please. Watson grinding fatal explosion and fire. This occurred in January of 2020. This is a leak of propylene from a high-velocity oxygen fuel thermal spray process, resulted in an explosion at the Watson Grinding and Manufacturing Company facility in Houston, Texas. The leak was caused by a disconnected hose inside a coating booth. Consequences of this are 2 employees were fairly injured, as well as a member of the public. 2 additional employees were injured, and it damaged hundreds of structures, homes, and businesses, and that company is no longer in business. The report was released June 29th, 2023, and it contained 2 recommendations. Next slide, please. And the last of the 4 is Evergreen Packaging Paper Mill, fire during hot work. This occurred September 21, 2020. This is a paper mill in Canton, North Carolina. It was undergoing a planned shutdown and associated maintenance and capital project work. In a pulp bleaching unit, 2 contract companies were performing simultaneous work inside the connected process vessels. Fire started when an electric heat gun fell into a bucket of flammable resin. This resulted in 2 fatalities, and the report was released September 21st, 2021, and it had 8 recommendations. Next slide, please. Now, I like to put all these kinds of things in perspective at the end of the year. And so I give you a little bit of a summary about these 4 investigations. These 4 investigations represent 7 fatalities, 169 injured workers, contractors, occasionally members of the public. Significant public impact. That's shelters in place. It's when they shut down highways, when they shut down waterways, that kind of thing. And significant property and environmental damage. Obviously, the environmental damage, anytime anything goes into the air, into the water, that kind of thing, into the soil. Significant property damage, you heard houses were impacted, businesses were impacted. Just an incredible amount of damage. From these 4 investigations, 24 recommendations have been issued addressing those consequences and causes, and all of those are now closed. So that's always a big victory for chemical safety. Next slide, please. Our advocacy program. This is a program where we get the word out from the Chemical Safety Board. This is where we are trying to close out recommendations. This is where we're trying to let people know what happened in investigations so that they can prevent them from happening at their facilities. It addresses a lot of things. We had a very good year this past year. We went out with 1 magazine article, some press releases, advocacy events, outreach, those kinds of things. This is when the board, our investigators, sometimes our recommendation specialists, this is when we get out there and we present at various locations, various different groups, putting out our message. We did public comment for the Federal Register twice, and then we issued the CSB Investigation Digest, 20th anniversary of the 2005 fatal BP America refinery explosion in Texas City, Texas. One of the recommendation specialists, Amanda Johnson, she put this product together, and it's very well written, and it has been very well received. I recommend, if you haven't read it, you read it. It gives you the highlight of a very detailed investigation back in 2005. And then our CSB's video production team, they put out 6 videos this year. So again, advocacy program has had a lot of successes. Next slide, please. The bread and butter of our advocacy program, though, as far as driving implementation of recommendations, is our communication with our recommendation recipients. Without that communication, it is very difficult. I won't say impossible, but I will say very difficult to close the recommendations out. And so what I wanted to do is highlight where this was extremely exceptional, especially throughout the year. API, they are our biggest stakeholder. They are the recipient of the majority of, well, I won't say the majority, but a tremendous amount of recommendations that we have issued. This year, they've advanced 3 positively from various investigations and closed 7. And that's a big number. Aghorn Operating Inc. from the Aghorn investigation, they advanced 1 and closed 5. Ohio Refining Company from our BP Husky investigation, they advanced 1 and closed 4. The Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement under the Department of Interior, they closed 4 recommendations from the Macondo investigation. Synovus advanced 1 recommendation and closed 3 from the Husky investigation, and the Environmental Protection Agency, they closed 3 from various investigations. And it's always good, and I'm going to give a shout out to our federal sister agencies, BSEE and EPA. It typically takes a very long time to close a recommendation to a federal agency, and the fact that between the 2 of them they closed 7 is just amazing. It was a great year. Next slide, please. So what happens when things don't go so well? Okay, I told you back we were going to talk about the 14 unacceptable advanced recommendations. All 14 of those came from 2 companies. One of those was 9 was from the Didion Milling Company, and 5 is from Yank and Majestic OPC Polymers. What happens when these things continue to go and they close out unacceptable? That is 9 losses for safety. So as a result, to prevent that from happening, we begin to aggressively reach out and try to establish communications with the recommendation recipient. In the case of Didion, to their credit, they engaged with us, and every one of those 9 recommendations that was unacceptably advanced, we like to say we turn those frowns upside down. All of them were then advanced acceptably. And in fact, 4 of those have been acceptably closed since then. So that is an example of our success story. As a matter of fact, during the shutdown, once we came back, we saw that they've been trying to communicate with us, and they've done a tremendous amount of communication since we've been back. So that, like I say, that is our success story so far. Next slide, please. So far, we've not had the same experience with Yank and Majestic OPC Polymers. For those of you that don't know, this was an incident that happened April 2021. A flammable mixture and its vapors became pressurized and then released through a seal of a closed manway of an operating kettle at OPC Polymers. OPC Polymers is a resin plant that was on the Yank and Majestic facility. This happened in Columbus, Ohio. The vapor spread throughout the facility, forming a flammable cloud, which found an ignition source and exploded, resulting in a fire. One employee was fatally injured due to burns and smoke inhalation. This employee was found partially covered by rubble inside the 2nd floor of the resin plant. 8 other employees were transported to area hospitals for treatment, and their injuries included 3rd-degree burns, limb fractures, and 1 of those employees had a leg amputated. There were 12 employees there that night, and 9 of them were seriously impacted. Again, 1 fatality and 8 injured. Currently, the 5 recommendations that we issued to OPC Polymers, or Yank and Majestic OPC Polymers, are all currently open unacceptable. And at the CSB, unacceptable statuses to us are like sand in the gears of achieving chemical safety excellence. So we are trying to do everything that we can to establish communications with Yankton Majestic OPC polymers. So again, if you're watching Yankton Majestic OPC polymers, we strongly encourage you to engage and communicate with us, and we can turn this around. Next slide, please. All right, now we're going to finish up this presentation with the highlighted recommendations, those that occurred since the last public meeting. The first of those is Aghorn Operating Inc. Water Flood Station hydrogen sulfide release. This happened in October of 2019. An Aghorn employee responded to a pump oil level alarm at the water flood station in Odessa, Texas. The pump was not isolated as it should have been, kicked on and released water containing hydrogen sulfide, fatally injuring the employee. Again, this is one of those tragic issues with where one of the members of the public, in this case, the employee's spouse, was also fatally injured because he was not answering his phone. He did not come home. She loaded up the kids in the car, drove to the water flood station. She did a search and she was overcome by the same hydrogen sulfide that fatally injured her husband, and she was fatally injured. Now, from this investigation, we issued 9 recommendations, and we're going to talk about R7 to Aghorn. We asked them to develop and implement a site-specific security program to prevent unknown and unplanned entrance of those not employed by Aghorn, starting with access gates that lock upon entering and departing the facility. Next slide, please. And they did that. They had several water flood stations where they had to install fencing, and then they had to install lockable gates. In addition to that, they did develop a site security program that does prevent unplanned entrances by non-employees. The thing that took it took a little while, but that's because, I mean, they had to go out into the middle of the desert and install all this stuff. So not the desert, but Texas. As a result of their actions, this recommendation was closed acceptable. Aghorn has worked very diligently this year to acceptably close 5 of their open recommendations. And as a result of that, it's going to close out all the recommendations for Aghorn, which is one of the reasons that we highlighted their recommendation. Next slide, please. Last but not least, we're going to talk about Loy Lang Box Company pressure vessel explosion. This happened April 3rd of 2017. The bottom head of a pressure vessel catastrophically failed due to corrosion and an inadequate repair. The pressure vessel launched, crashing through the roof of a nearby business, where 3 members of the public were fatally injured. Again, this is another tragic story when you get into the details of it. A husband and wife were interviewing for a job in a completely different building when this pressure vessel came through, fatally injured them and the person who is interviewing them. So as a result, we issued 8 recommendations in this as a part of this investigation. We're going to talk about R8 to the National Board of Boiler and Pressure Vessel Inspectors, NBBI. We asked them to update MB 263, which is the rules for commissioned inspectors, to include prescriptive elements in the boiler and pressure vessel repair and alteration inspection and acceptance process that would prevent the acceptance of a non-conforming repair. Next slide, please. So in 2025, they did put out those rules, rules for commissioned inspectors, NB 263, and the effective date on that was January 1 of 2025. They also issued an addition to the National Board Inspection Code, Part 32, that contains new requirements for evaluating flush patches and adjacent material. They broadly publicized the events at Loy Lang, as well as other incidents, and they have been pumping out information ever since. As a result, they went over and above what we asked them to do. So they received the status of closed exceeds recommended action. And this is this is our highest level of closed statuses. This not only achieves chemical safety excellence, but it exceeds it. It exceeds everything that we asked them to do. It's a fantastic thing when this happens. So, like I say, wanted to make sure we definitely included them in the presentation and give them a way to go at the end. So that concludes the presentation from the Office of Recommendations, and with that, I will pass it back to Executive Director Kleist. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Chuck, for that very comprehensive summary of the recommendations work done by your group and the rest of the agency. The recommendations program is often doesn't get the recognition that perhaps it should throughout industry. The CSB's mission has two major components. The investigation program that the agency operates really identifies the need for safety change through our investigative process. And the recommendations program is the outreach and advocacy tool that we have to drive that safety change. And together is how the agency accomplishes the very important objective and mission that we have, and that is to improve chemical process safety here in the United States. So thank you for the team members for their contribution to our work. Mr. Chairperson, that concludes the Office of Investigations and Recommendations presentation for this meeting. I turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you to all your members of your team there who gave those tremendous presentations. I won't recite their names all over again for the benefit of the audience, but we have a terrific team in our Office of Investigations and Recommendation, as we do throughout the CSB. We are a small agency, and every member of our team pulls on several oars at the same time, and we all work together as a team. And so when you see something like the presentations you had today of the terrific investigative work and then the recommendations, implementation efforts that the agency makes, you can not only thank the people who are part of the investigations and recommendations teams, but also all the people in the handful of other offices we have, because there's not a lot of them, and they help keep the agency up and running so we can do all the great work that we do through our investigations efforts. A couple of quick things before we go to our public comment period. I just want to point out that on 3 of the presentations you heard today on the new investigations that we've launched, the Horizon Biofuels and the U.S. Steel, as was indicated, we put out investigation updates on those. Those are available on our website. So a lot of the information that you saw today on the screen is in those reports. And so if you are interested in either one of those, please go to our website and take a look at those updates. I will say, without getting too far over my skis, that we are in the process of working on an update, excuse me, for the Austin Powder investigation as well. That should be done at some point here in the near future. And when that's available, we'll put that on the website and make an announcement about that. So for those of you who are following that investigation or interested in it, keep your eyes peeled for that. And then just a couple of other small things, or not so small actually, with regard to the accidental release reporting rule. Dan Talima gave a terrific overview of the efforts that the agency's been making to push out more information to the public about the serious chemical incidents that are reported to the agency on a weekly basis. We are getting more incident reports. There can be a variety of factors involved in that, but we want the public as well as stakeholders, and that includes a wide variety of people in industry and labor and elsewhere, to have access to that information so that, as Executive Director Steve Kleist said, they can learn from those incidents, even though we haven't put out full investigation reports or actually conducted deployments to those incidents. And in addition to the volume 3 that Dan discussed during his presentation, there were 2 other volumes that the agency put out, one in January and one in March, in addition to the volume 3 that he discussed in his presentation that we put out in July. And all told, those 3 volumes cover 81 serious chemical incidents, and across 29 states there are multiple incidents, and in some of the states, which is why there are 29 covered as opposed to 81, for example. There are unfortunately 14 fatalities that are covered in those incidents, also 65 serious injuries. And all told, in those 3 volumes represent $3.5 billion in property damage to the facilities that were involved in those incidents. So there's a lot of very, very valuable, very, very important information and some fairly short summaries that we put on the website. So please take a look at those as well, because they're all up there and publicly available. Now, I will stop talking and we will turn it over to the public for comments. As I've mentioned at the outset, we ask everybody to, if you have a comment you want to make, please raise your hand, push the button or the icon so that Steve Hambrick can recognize you and get you admitted to the meeting verbally. And also, if you could please state your name and the organization you are with, if any, that would be very helpful for us to keep a record of who we're communicating with and who participates in our events. And then last but not least, again, if you don't feel so inclined to make a comment in this meeting, you can always do so by going to, by submitting one rather to the CSB at public at csb.gov at the email address public, PUBLIC, at csb.gov. And with that, Steve, we'll see if we have any takers on the comments.
We did have somebody enter a question in the chat.
Okay.
Renee Mitchell asked, for the AES explosion, who is the lead investigator for the team, and are the presentations available to the public? Kind of a 2-parter there. They've just raised their hand. I'm going to promote them here and let them go ahead and ask that out loud. You should be able to answer your question or ask your question.
Bill,
I'll go ahead and answer. We are going to post all of the presentations. This is Hillary Cohen with the Chemical Safety Board, and I should have those up under the events section in a few minutes.
And
didn't know if Renee was going to make a comment or not, but also I believe part of the question was, I believe, who's the lead investigator on it? It's Cruz Redmond is his name. I believe that's on the slide as well. That will be up on the website. So.
And then we had Renee. You still have the opportunity to ask any additional questions real quick before we move on to the next question. Right. No answer there. There is another question that was placed in the chat here. Any other details about the root cause from the accident at AES that you can disclose? I'll let yourself, Mr. Owens, or Mr. Kleiss answer that.
Well, I'll take a shot at it, and then Steve can probably clear up anything I say wrong. But it's way too early at this phase of the investigation to even speculate about the cause of here. We have a team in the field, as was mentioned here today. We're doing a lot of work. We're talking to other agencies, including the ATF, about it. We're a long way away from the end here. So at the appropriate time, we will put out an update on that investigation as well, but we don't have a timeline for that yet. As I mentioned in my opening comments, the building where the explosion occurred at the Accurate Energetic Systems facility in McEwen, Tennessee, was completely destroyed. And there was debris scattered for quite a great distance as a result of the explosion, which the ATF and other emergency response agencies collected. And so our team is in the process of, again, working with them, going through the information that was gathered, and also in communications with the company itself, getting information from the company, and also talking to other parties about how these types of operations work. So we're a ways away from that, but as soon as we are at a point where we'll be putting out an update, we'll make sure people know that, and you can have access to the information that we have at the point that we're ready to put something out. So Steve, did I get that right?
Yes, sir. We are still at the early phase of the investigation work and data collection. And as you stated, when we have sufficient information that has been verified, we can develop the traditional investigation update and have that released for the public consumption.
I will just add one other thing too. When the ATF concluded its work, it held a series of press conferences and put out a lot of information publicly about the work that it did. But at the conclusion of the ATF's work, the ATF estimated that there were at least 24,000 pounds of explosives that were detonated, explosive materials that were detonated during the incident. Part of our work at the CSB will be to confirm that as best we can, as well as to gather additional details about the nature of the explosion and, again, the cause of it, and other details surrounding that incident. So, but it was, as we've indicated, a very massive explosion. And unfortunately, 16 people were killed, and a lot of significant damage done. So.
Thank you for that response. We have one more in the chat from Pamela Kirkland. It states here, Pamela Kirkland with Georgia Public Broadcasting. I know it wasn't addressed during this meeting, but do you know when we can anticipate a final report in the biolab explosion in Conyers, Georgia?
Well, first of all, I want to say welcome to Pamela. It's good to meet you virtually. You've done some terrific reporting down in Georgia. We've all followed it fairly closely, and we appreciate the legwork that you've been doing down there, using some of the information that we've provided in our updates and other activities, but information you've gathered on your own. So our hats off to you for some great reporting down there. Again, I'll rely on Steve Kleist to correct me if I get it wrong, but it's going to be a little bit longer before we get to the point where we will be in a position to put out a final investigative report. Our team is, up until recently, we're still collecting information. We had some final information that we needed to get from BioLab, and our efforts to get that were delayed in part because of the government shutdown. And so, we lost a period of about 42 days from October 1 until the middle of November, where our team could not work on any of the ongoing investigations, including BioLab. So we were a little bit behind where we otherwise had anticipated we would be, but stay tuned. We expect to be getting that out in the not too distant future. So, Steve, did I make you nervous with that answer? So.
No, sir, that is correct.
Okay. Every time I make commitments about how soon investigations are going to do something, I can see Steve get nervous. So.
No worries. I've opened up the microphone, Mr. Keatley. I see you placed the question in the chat. You're welcome to unmute and ask your question on your own, or I'm happy to read it for you.
Hey, this is Josh Kelly, journalist with the Associated Press. I was just hoping to get clarity on, what stage is the investigation into the Clairton Cokeworks explosion currently at? How should we think about that? And when can we expect the final formal completed report on that explosion? Thanks.
Well, like the AES investigation, this is a very recent investigation for us. We got into it, and again, we lost time because of the government shutdown. We did put out the investigation update. So Josh, I think you probably have seen that by now because that was put out before the shutdown. As we indicated, the team is on the ground up there today, continuing to do work. But as always, it's going to take a lot more digging and a lot more interviewing and a lot more analysis before we get to a point. But this is one of those investigations where we may do some things along the way, including the possibility of an additional update as we move forward. But whenever we put out any new information on it, we'll make sure everybody's aware of that. So thank you for participating in the call today, Josh.
No worries. We've got a couple more questions in the chat. Ms. Mitchell, I understand that you would like some contact information for the lead investigator for the AES investigation. As Mr. Owens stated, if you send an email to public@csb.gov, we'll try and close the loop that way, but no worries there. We would appreciate that. An additional question here. Brendan Wanop from Z Energy Ltd in New Zealand. No question, just wanted to thank the CSB for the work that you do. We regularly use the resources you provide publicly in safety conversations within our organization all the way down in New Zealand.
We appreciate him participating in the meeting. I don't know if he's up early or up late down there. I can't figure out the time zones from here in New Zealand. But again, we appreciate him participating, but we also especially appreciate them using the information. That's one thing that we didn't really get into in this meeting or much into other other meetings that we've had. That while our primary focus is obviously in the United States and U.S. Industries and facilities that are impacted as well as U.S. citizens, the materials and the information and the investigation reports and videos and other things that the agency puts out are utilized globally. We have on a regular basis inquiries from outside the United States, countries where you could imagine where there are industries that could be affected by the types of incidents that have occurred at the facilities where we've investigated, whether it's petroleum production or mining or wherever else. So again, while our efforts are geared toward the U.S. Companies and industries that are affected with chemical incidents, the agency does have a bit of a global impact here.
With that, Mr. Owens, I've confirmed with the team. One more. There's one remaining question, I think. Carly Vinson, consultant for Ramball. Thank you for the work. When can we expect volume 4 of the CSB incident reports to be published?
Well, I'm not going to put Dan Talima on the spot, but I know that there's work being done already on volume 4. In fact, it's been being done for a while. And again, this is another one of those things that the shutdown affected because we, in addition to not being able to do investigations, we couldn't do work on or work on the ongoing investigations. We couldn't work on those incident reports either for volume 4. So we have our fingers crossed. There's been a lot of good work done already on that, and we'll put that out in not too distant future. So stay tuned on that. So, and I will add one other thing on reporting rule. I'm going to leave this to Dan, but our objective, in addition to doing the summaries that Dan did the presentation on, we do provide what we call the top line data for the reporting rule. If you go to our website, you'll see that on a quarterly basis, Dan and his team have posted a spreadsheet that lists all the incidents that have been reported to the CSB to date, the location, and then whether there was a fatality, serious injury, or substantial property damage involved in that. That's about the extent of the data, that's the information that's in that web sheet. But after the shutdown, we were able to go back and post the data as of the end of the fiscal year 25. So as of September 30th, that's the most recent data that's up on our website now. But keeping as best we can in light of all the additional work that's now going on at the agency, the expectation is that at some point, again, in the not too distant future, we'll be able to update that once we get to the end of this quarter, into this calendar year. So probably sometime after the first of the year, there'll be an additional posting and an updated spreadsheet with information on it, in addition to whenever we get out the volume 4 of the incident reports. So stay tuned for that as well. A lot of stuff in the works.
Thank you for that update. We do have Kathy Sandoval with her hand raised. You should be able to unmute and ask a question, or
I think we're delighted to hear from Kathy. We hope things are going well. We enjoyed working with her terrifically when she was a member of the CSB board. Well, she's been on the other side of this of this screen in the past, and so
go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. So really appreciate, just wanted to say really appreciate the CSB's work. I'm a law professor once again at Santa Clara University, grading exams now, and looking forward to teaching energy law next semester, including discussions about safety. And just wanted to underscore and thank the CSB for your work. This report today just underscores the scale and scope and depth of these issues that you're investigating, that the CSB is investigating, as it has a tremendous toll that is physical, environmental, but also economic, and really eats away at America's economic capacity. So the CSB's work is really vital. It is dismaying to see the uptick in incidents, but the work in monitoring, reporting, and then ongoing work in making sure that recommendations are investigated and implemented fully is really vital to our nation, and indeed apparently instructive to the world. So just really wanted to thank you for your great work, and it was a great honor to have been a part of this organization. So continue to be part of the family from the other side. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Kathy. Delighted to hear from you, and hope things continue to go well back in Santa Clara Law School. So thanks for taking part in this meeting. All right, Steve, is that it?
We have no emails in the public inbox, and I've got nice 2 short last questions, and I'll figure we'll wrap it up from there. Okay. First question: has CSB ever considered offering a course on incident investigations? And then number 2 would be Daniel from the Chlorine Institute asks, great year-end summary and impressive recommendations to close out our stats.
Let me take Daniel first, just to say thank you, Daniel, for participating here. We worked with the Chlorine Institute in the past. We actually had meetings before the shutdown with the Chlorine Institute, and looking forward to having even more active engagement with you all, Daniel, in the months ahead, hopefully in a positive way. There's not too much going on too badly in the chlorine industry, but we really appreciate the great work that you all do there in promoting safety among your members. And so thank you, and thank you for being part of the meeting today. With regard to the class, I will say if anyone on the CSB staff were to do something like that, it would have to be on their own time, on their own off-duty free time, I guess I should say, to do something like that. We have a very small staff. We are currently less than 50 employees at the CSB, and every one of them, as you heard from the presentations today, are running as fast as they can on multiple fronts to produce terrific work that has very significant impacts for chemical safety. But I will always put a but on a statement like that. One of the things that we do, as you heard during Chuck Barbie's presentation, is participate in a wide variety of conferences, symposiums, webinars, other events, and some of our board members, as well as some of our incident investigators, have spoken at universities, at law schools, and other institutions where learning takes place. And they also have gone to safety conferences held by industry trade associations and also held by labor organizations. And so there's a form of teaching that we try to engage in, but it's really more of a sharing of safety lessons that we do when we are participating in those events. And so if there's a particular program that anyone has that they would like to have someone from the CSB participate in, excuse me, please let us know and we'll see if we can take part in it. So thank you very much.
Nothing else? I think that's all we have for the question and answer portion. Again, as Mr. Owen said, if you have questions after this meeting, please email them to the public at csb.gov and we'll get back to you as soon as we're able.
Okay, and then two more housekeeping things here. One, we'll turn it back over to Sylvia Johnson for any closing remarks we have. She has rather, and then remind people of when our next meeting will be. So, Sylvia, any last words?
Well, just thank you everyone for attending today. I've said it before, and I think it bears repeating that your presence and participation in these meetings shows your commitment. It's also important to our shared mission. And your participation in these meetings help us to stay focused on our mission, which is to protect workers, communities, and the environment. And I again want to congratulate the CSB team for all of their dedication and hard work, because you are the people who keep our mission moving forward, and that work does not go unnoticed. And so I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone for being here. And Kathy, it was good hearing from you. So as Steve said, it was great working with you, and glad that you're still engaged in keeping an eye on the work of the CSB and carrying our message outside of the government. So thank you for that. And the final thing I would say is I'm wishing everyone a happy, safe, and healthy holiday season. And I look forward to seeing you all again in 2026.
All righty. Well, thank you, Sylvia, and thanks to all our presenters here, and thanks to everyone who participated. Our next meeting will be on March the 19th, again at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a Thursday. We'll have a notice that will go out from the board. It's in the public, in the Federal Register notice already, and I believe up on the website as part of that Federal Register notice. But again, we will put out an announcement about that as we get closer to date. And with that, echo Sylvia's comments and wish everyone a happy holidays and look forward to seeing you in 2026. So, and with that, I think we're adjourned. So, thanks everyone.